This is going to be like the key, like I guess, debate point for a lot of people. And this is your belief about things going from, say, 13% fewer women in college in 1972 and now 15 points higher today. There are people who believe, one, this is nefarious and conspiratorial, and then there's another group of people that believe this is just sort of like negligent, and you had identity politics where like, I'm worried about getting money for my group, and I just forgot about your group. And you believe it's the second, not the first, that this is just a function of, it just happened to, this is a secondary order, but it wasn't conspiratorial or nefarious. Can you go into that? Because you understand, there's a lot of people watching, this is YouTube, there's a lot of people watching, that's absolutely what they believe. They call it the Matrix. They have all these different names for it. So if you could go specifically into your beliefs about that.
I think that that's an incredibly dangerous idea, that the problems that men and boys are facing are the result of some kind of conspiracy, some kind of feminist conspiracy that the women are out to get the men. And of course, you can always find some extremists online who'll say some stuff, or you can go back and read Judith Butler or something.
You guys check out Kill All Men podcast. Kill All Men. It's on Apple right now. You can subscribe.
And then you can generalize that out if you really want to kind of believe in that. But know what's actually happening. Like, why are men struggling in the labor market? Not because women came along, but because of deindustrialization and free trade. Like, why are men struggling in education? Because the education system isn't quite as friendly towards male styles of learning and towards men as it is to girls and women. Girls have a natural advantage in the education system now. That's showing up in our results. But it's not because some cabal of feminists got together 100 years ago and said, you know what, if we design the education system this way, then eventually, a century from now,
we'll be in charge. We'll be in charge. Yes, I get it.
Completely crazy. But it's also crazy not to look at that gap and say, hold on. Something is happening in our education system here. We are not actually educating our boys and men as well as we're educating our girls and women for all kinds of reasons we could get into. That's just true. And that truth can be held without it being some kind of conspiracy. This idea that because something bad is happening in society, it means someone wants that to be happening is almost always wrong and incredibly dangerous to our collective psychology, because it gets into the blame game. I'm suffering. Whose fault is that? You look around for someone to blame, and that's almost never the case. And we zero-sum game everything. We look for a villain. There's almost never a villain. There are just social forces, economic forces that are creating real difficulties for real people.
There's another fantastic book. It's called Conquering the Sociopath Next Door by Dr. Martha Stout. She wrote the first one called The Sociopath Next Door in 2005, and the second one in 2015. When she wrote, or in 2020, when she wrote the book, one of the things she talks about at the end of the book is called corporate sociopathy, and the idea that you take a bunch of empathetic people and put them into a corporate structure, and they are incentivized to do things so that they don't lose their job and that the corporation makes more money. And you take the same thing and you can extrapolate it to government. I do things to make sure I continue to get reelected and make sure that my tribe and my team wins. And in doing so, I have little to no empathy for other tribes. And when you look at it, when you examine it as corporations are a legal fiction, when you examine the legal fiction as a human being or as an individual entity, it acts like a sociopath. But the people inside of it were not sociopaths. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
It does, yeah. And you've raised the issue of empathy, and I do think that, and I know like this is rational, we're being empirical, etc. But I think that one of the reasons why why men and boys in particular are attracted to a number of male figures is because they feel like they're empathizing with them. They're just understanding that they're struggling. Yeah. Right? And I think understanding that is one of the reasons why a lot of boys and men are drawn to the kind of, you've called it the manosphere, etc. And even to people like Jordan Peterson and so on. It's just because I think, oh, thank goodness, he's listening to me. I actually did a Big Think video that's had a lot of views, and I've had so many emails from young men just saying, I was in tears by the end of this video. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for understanding me. All I did was put up a bunch of charts.
Let me put a pin here.